For over 20 years, Nicole has been helping people make financial decisions that quietly shape the rest of their lives. She's built and run a wealth management practice since 2003, authored 5 books, and guided families through market crashes, career pivots, marriages, retirement, and the uncertainty, not from theory, but from lived experience. Nicole never planned on becoming a wealth advisor. Her early heroes were leaders who shaped policy and history, but this work found her, and she stayed because money, when handled well, gives people peace, confidence, and freedom. This is the type of conversation that MyFinJourney is built around, the kind of clarity that changes lives. Nicole, welcome to MyFinJourney.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Nicole, I wanted to dive right in. You've worked with clients through market booms, crashes, marriages, retirement, and loss. What do you feel people consistently get wrong about money early in their lives?
It's a great question. I feel like people get wrong that they don't talk about it. I also feel like there's a huge lack of financial literacy in our country. My daughter's a figure skater. She's a sophomore, and I'm the mom that drives all the girls from the high school to the ice arena on Wednesdays. And so yesterday, I had the girls get in the car, and the girl that got in the back seat, she's like, "Ugh, I just came from personal finance." And my daughter, who's sitting beside me, is like, "My mom made that happen." And so in the state of Minnesota, I had been working for years and years and years to get it. And so my daughter's class, finally, so the graduating class of 2028 has to have a class on personal finance. But these girls, so I was like, "What are you learning?" She's like, "Well, let me pull it up." So she had to pull it up on her phone. I'm like, "Have you learned about the Roth IRA?" She's like, she touched on it, but she's like, "I don't know what it is." And so she started getting embarrassed. Like I was going to ask her all these questions. I'm like, "Here's the deal, girls. You are going to ace this course." Because when I'm the mom that drives you, I'm like, "You got to ask your questions then. We'll have these great conversations." So we ended up having a great conversation. She's like, "Yeah, today I learned about car insurance." And she goes, "I learned I got to get my grades up because if my grades are higher, then my car insurance, premium is less." And my daughter's like, "What?" So it just shows that, and I really impress upon these girls, like, you need to talk about this, but yet go home and talk about it, because us as parents, people feel so intimidated about money. And that is the biggest inhibitor. So we're intimidated to face it. We're intimidated to talk about it. We're embarrassed. And so I think that's the biggest mistake. No matter what you go through in life, you lose your spouse, you lose your job, we're like embarrassed about that, and embarrassed that we've lost our job, let alone embarrassed, like, what does this mean from a financial situation, let alone, like, there's so many layoffs right now. What does that mean for your family, your new year, all of those types of things. And so that lack of knowledge inhibits people because of confidence. And I think you need to get over that and realize that the majority of people out there don't understand money. You also need to realize that things change constantly, and there's nothing wrong with asking a question when it comes to your money, because how else are you going to know? Like back when I did my radio show, people would be like, "Oh, well, I need a lot of money to see a financial advisor." And I'm like, that's not true. Like most financial advisors, including our office, like we don't have minimums, because how are you going to get a lot of money if you don't see someone and get some guidance and get some help? So don't hesitate to ask those questions.
Nicole, I really appreciate the answer. Not only from a place of like genuine authenticity, but from a place of genuine value. And there's only one problem with the answer, in my opinion, Nicole. I think you provided too much value. So I'm just taking notes and thinking, where do I want to lead the conversation, right? You talked about, people don't talk about it, people don't learn about it. Then I'm thinking, why does it have to be so hard? It sounds like you implemented people actually learning about it in high school in terms of personal finance. Then I'm thinking, why does it have to be so intimidating? Why do people have to be intimidated by money? Those are like two different questions. And then it's like, the nice statement you made just now, like things change, there's no harm in asking. So if you could address like all these 6 questions that I just asked, or whichever is easiest, right? If you could just continue the conversation in a very candid, free-flowing way to just address, your anecdotal experiences.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why, like, I get asked to be on TV a lot. It's like, well, one, I'm not your 65-year-old typical financial advisor, but two, like, I laugh like that. Like, you need to bring some levity to your life and your situation. And money can be overwhelming and intimidating. And the more fun that you can make it, the better off you are. And so that's where, like, my fifth book was about, it started first about dating and money because I was single for numbers of years. And so when I started writing it, some clients found out that I was writing this book about dating and money. And they're like, do you know you saved our marriage? So the book actually became more about, like, what is your own relationship with money? What is your relationship with in your dating or with your significant other? What's your relationship with money with your kids? So we then even came up with this deck of cards. And so how else can you make money fun is by asking, pick out this deck of cards. And my kids now, they like roll their eyes. And I love it. We're gonna have a family meeting. And so it's just, do you think you make more or less money than your friends? Does it matter to you? Like, when have you ever been asked this question? And when have you ever just stopped and thought about it yourself? And so I'm not here to say, like, you have to talk about money with other people. You could ask yourself a question every night before you go to bed. I mean, especially like, where do I want to be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And what small things can I do that will make a huge impact? Like, I am not from money. I started working when I was 11 at the neighbor's in-home daycare. My parents, I'm an only child, and my parents were I was the first generation to go to college. And my parents basically were like, here's a pair of tennis shoes once I got to high school, because I wanted the fancy, whatever, Jirachi, I don't remember the brand name. There was Guess and there was something else. And my parents wouldn't buy those for me. And they're like, here's 5 shirts, a pair of jeans, a pair of shoes, and like kind of go figure it out. So I started working when I was 11 and I saved money. And so by the time I was 16, I had 10 grand in my savings account. And I heard my mom on the phone one day and she's like, just sell. And just sell the Microsoft, sell the Intel. And I'm like, Mom, like, can I buy some stock? Like, I've got 10 grand in my account. And she's like, oh, honey, this is just I'm a former figure skater. And so it was a figure skating friend's dad that happened to be a stockbroker back then. Ironically, at the same Morgan Stanley office that I got started at. Back then it was called Dean Witter. But my mom's like, oh, honey, he just did us a favor. You have to have $100,000 to invest. So what did I do with my 10 grand? I went and studied abroad over in Germany in high school. And I spent all that money. Every country that I went to, I was like, I'm going to buy something from this country. And so I was spending money kind of on like, I really believe if you spend more money in experiences, you're going to be happier than if you spend money on things. So I was spending money on things, but it really was the experience behind it of like going to a country and like figuring out what they were known for and buying that item as a memorable thing. But my commercial building, I would have not needed so much of the bank's help if I would have invested some of that money. And so that's what's one reason why we don't have minimums. But two, I'm here to say, like, I own a commercial building. I just finished building my dream home. Like, I went through a horrible divorce. I had to give him the company name, the website, the phone number, the 12 financial advisors. I started all over again. And so if I can do this, anyone can do this. And I really believe in and I don't like the word manifesting. I'm trying to find a different word. I just haven't found a different word for it. But I believe you can set this intention of, okay, what do I really want? And so many of us, we're so busy throughout our lives. I mean, like today, oh my goodness. Like we were just telling you before this podcast started, like left the house at 5. I'll be lucky if I get home before 11 p.m. I started using military time on my phone because it's like, okay, am I going to be there at 4 a.m. or 4 p.m.? And my daughter's a figure skater. I want to work out. I say yes to a lot of things. It's year end, so it's just extra super busy. But all of those things that I'm doing, I want to be doing. So many of us just do stuff to do stuff. And we're, in my opinion, going through the motions. Or as Oprah said, we're living unconsciously. So how can you live consciously with what do you want in life? What are your goals? What do you want? And then attaching a dollar amount to those things, manifesting them by visualizing them and talking about them. Like, it's amazing the stuff that can happen. I took my kids to Africa on an African safari, but I've been 10 years. And so, people are like, oh my gosh, I can't do the live it list. Like, I can't go to Africa. Yeah, you can. You just maybe in 10 years. You just figure out what you want and then you set up those things in motion to make it happen.
I love that, Nicole. So before I dive in deeper, where exactly in Africa did you go?
We flew in to Johannesburg. And then we actually also did go up to Cape. Oh my gosh, it's escaping
Cape
me
Town?
right now. Yes, Cape Town. Thank you.
Okay.
I was thinking Cape Cod is in my mind for some reason. I'm like, that's not it. So we flew into Johannesburg. We spent time going around there, petted a cheetah, played with baby lion cubs. I love giraffes, saw giraffes and all that. And then we took a flight and went over to Cape Town. Went to the island. We saw where Nelson Mandela's prison cell was. And it was just like the most amazing trip and experience ever. And part of it is because when my kids were 3 and 4, I had met a gentleman that had said, when your kids are 13 and 14, you need to take them on an African safari. Like that is like the perfect age to go, and it will just be this phenomenal experience. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So I set up, some accounts, I put money away. I talked about it all the time. Like when my kids are 13 and 14, I need to take them to Africa. How do you go to Africa as a single mom to teenagers? Well, I tell people, right? So I had a client that was in my office and she's like, well, don't you know? Her husband had passed away, but her husband's best friend, one of them, lived in Africa. And that's what he did. He was a tour guide. So I Venmoed him the money. I showed up and we had the trip of a lifetime that we continue to talk about and we'll talk about forever.
How scary was it to Venmo some pseudo random person in Africa?
I wouldn't do it again.
Why not? You had the best experience. You talk about it all the time. Why wouldn't you do it again?
Well, it's not some stranger. I knew, he was the best friend of one of my, so I would, there's so many scams out there now. Like that's the thing. When I did my radio show, I was like, 2 things. Don't ever pay for a credit card, which now I do. And it makes sense to pay for a credit card for the advantages. And the second thing is I said, don't ever pay for identity theft or fraud protection. And you need to do that. So there's so much fraud out there now. If you know the person, but it's interesting. I'm headed to Dominican Republic and I want to do a private buggy ride. And you could go online and book it, right? But it's not private. I don't want to be with a group of 10 people that someone's going really, really slow. I'm an adventure seeker. I need my guide that's going to take me fast. So I've been going online and messaging a few people, and there was a gentleman. He's like, our online payment system isn't working right now. You can just Venmo me the money. I'm like, no, sorry. So I'm still looking for a buggy service in the Dominican Republic. But so I knew them. But when we landed, I had this thought of oh my gosh, I'm in Africa with 2 kids. I gave this guy money. I really don't have the detail of the ends of the he just took care of everything. He took us, drove us everywhere. I paid him one sum and he paid for the hotels, he paid for the everything that we did. So I did have that fear of oh my God, is he going to show up? And he was there, but I have heard of people that have paid money and they show up in Africa and there's no one there. So don't just Venmo a random person. I knew of him. So he was a referral.
I hear you. I hear you, and I agree. And I think there's a couple different points. I think you touched on how things change, right? You mentioned the radio show. You mentioned things that maybe made sense once upon a time, but don't always make sense today. When I talk to people about credit cards, it's hey, where are you in life? Because not every credit card is the same. They're all plastic. They're all different forms of debt. They're all different forms of liability, but how you use them are different. Just like not every car is the same. And then you touched on another thing, fundamentally, sometimes if it doesn't feel right, it's not right, and don't do it. There's a difference between your friend or your best friend who's referring you to their best friend. There's a huge element of trust.
Yes.
Versus somebody random on the line who's just saying, hey, my system is down, just Venmo me. It's a very different situation. So I'm happy to hear you had a great experience. I want to understand from your perspective, because a lot of this that we've been talking about has maybe been different to what people traditionally hear when they talk to financial advisors and wealth managers. But before I dive deeper, I want to say if you're listening to this episode and if you're finding value, if you're loving Nicole's charisma, if it's helping you think differently about money, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, reach out to Nicole. We'll have her information in the show notes as well, because stories like this are what change your financial picture, and it's what helps you scale on your financial journey. Nicole, I'm really enjoying our conversation, and it leads me to wonder, how do you look at money? What do you believe in spending money on? I know you mentioned the trip to Africa. I know you mentioned the discipline of saving for 10 years. Where does that discipline come from? Especially in 2025, 2026, we're in the era of like immediate gratification.
Mm-hmm.
How do people, you know, we would use Cliff Notes back in our time. How do people just chat GPT your life to kind of get your hacks and implement it in their own lives?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm a former figure skater, and one of my coaches had her PhD in psychology. So she worked with me with the power of your mind. And in figure skating, it's goal, set an intention, and you have that commitment. And so that's really where my discipline started. And then I just always had lists. I always would dream big and think big, and studying abroad. When I lived over in Germany in college, one weekend I'd be in Greece, and then like a few days later I exposed my eyes to like, oh my gosh, there is this world, there are so many things I want to do and so many things I want to experience. And it was like, those bigger things are more important to me than having that cup of coffee every single day, or whatever it is. And so so fast forward, I'm a survivor of domestic violence. And in 2010 was the first time that my now ex-husband was arrested, and my kids were little. My son was 2. And from the outside, my life looked perfect. I was living, in a big house. We had boats, 4-wheelers, snowmobiles, multiple cars, like all this stuff. And I got the kids to bed one night. She was 2, he was 3. And I was like, how did I end up here? Because by that time I was going through a divorce, and it was just super messy. And I was coming to the realization that I was a victim of domestic violence. I'm going to do that. And so I rewrote my bucket list. And I'm like, I'm just going to do one thing a month for a year. That will be a distractor for me. So one of the things was to drive a race car. So I hopped on a plane, as one would, to Vegas to drive a race car. And it came from my best friend.
What car did you drive? What
How
car
fast?
did you drive?
It was a race car. It wasn't like, because you
Like
can go and like drive
an
a
Indy
Ferrari
500, like a NASCAR, like define
NASCAR.
race car for me. NASCAR.
Yep, it was a NASCAR.
Because a race car, I'm thinking like a Ferrari or something, or
No,
like an F1
it was like
car.
a real like NASCAR race car.
Okay.
And so on the plane ride out there, this gentleman sitting next to me on the plane, I don't know if you've ever had that where someone like has to talk to you the whole time. I had that gentleman. And
I
for
love
some
those
reason
people.
I was like in the local book club, and I had to read Steve Jobs' book. So I'm going through a divorce. Like, I mean, looking back, I'm like, why did I feel like I had this commitment to do all these things? But figure skating was like, taught me that. Like, if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. Like, you have a test on this date, or you have a competition, and you've got to prepare, and you need to do the work for it, and you got to make it happen by a certain deadline. So on this plane ride, the gentleman eventually was like, oh my God. He's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, you're doing one thing a month on your bucket list. He's like, are you dying? And he's like, is it cancer? And so at that moment, I was like, my life was so negative. I didn't need any more negative things. So I'm like, I got to call this something different. So I just started calling it the Live It list. And I'm like, I'm doing one thing a month on my Live It list. People didn't know what that was. Well, then I dug into it more. I read some studies, and I learned 1 in 3 Americans is happy. I learned if you spend more money on experiences, you're going to be happier than if you spend money on things. And so that solidified it even more for me. And that's where, yes, I'm a financial planner, but I'm more of a motivational speaker, and we have a Live It list journal. I just took 9 other people to Egypt on a Live It list trip. Next year is Iceland. That's still open. We're doing an e-bike tour in the summer, but that's fall, and Canyon Ranch here in a couple weekends. And so it's all about, for me, I would rather go to Egypt, a place that I've been dreaming of since I met a foreign exchange student from Egypt when I studied in college. I'd rather save money and put money for that than like go shopping and buy stuff that like after you buy it, you're like, why did I buy that? And so do I get sucked into Instagram and Facebook ads? Yes, I'm human. we all are. But for me, I do stop and pause many times, because I was like, should I spend this money on this, or could I be going to Iceland? And so it's all about what do you value in life and what are your priorities and setting your money towards those priorities.
So for Egypt, what's the plan? Where are you going?
We went. We went
Where
November.
did you go?
We went to the brand new, the museum just opened. Dr. Hawass, who is like the real life Indiana Jones, he gave us a tour of they just recently found mummies and the real dig site. We went there, we like climbed down. Oh my gosh, it was like the most amazing thing.
That was in like the center of the city that they
Yeah,
found this
and then
stuff.
yep, and then we went to the pyramids and we crawled inside the pyramids. We went to all three chambers. It was this the woman that helped coordinate this trip. She's like, I don't know that I could ever replicate this trip again. We were at the Sphinx with Dr. Hawass. Like, oh my gosh, like, you know, we went to the market, like we cruised down the Nile. That was the only way for us to like see so much in 11 days. We also did have a layover in Paris. And so we did do a tour at Notre Dame, which I had never seen since the fire. And so, yeah, it was like it still feels surreal that we were there. It was just an amazing, awesome trip. So
that's awesome. No, I'm happy to hear. I think you should add Jordan to your list if you haven't been before.
Yes, I have not been. So this next year, the bigger trip is Iceland, because I've never been. And then I think the following year, so 2027, we may do like Turkey or Portugal. I don't know. I like to go to places that I haven't been. So like Brazil or Belize or something, something like that. But
awesome.
yeah, it's
nice.
kind of driven. Originally, I wanted to do Turkey in 2026, but I have so many clients and friends that are like, I want to go to Iceland. And I'm like, okay, I did Dubai and then Egypt. And then I'm like, okay, let's do something totally different. So that's where Iceland came
That's
about.
beautiful. That's beautiful. So help me understand. I think you touched on mental fortitude, and it feels very powerful. It feels like sometimes when you hear someone on stage or you hear someone on social media, it feels like they talk about how important the mental game is, how important these sort of basic things are that I think people overlook. Can you help me understand, why do you think people overlook these foundational things that enable people to scale so aggressively?
I think it comes back to like, we're always looking for the answer and we're looking for the quick fix. And sometimes those things that take mental fortitude are not necessarily quick fixes. And there are sometimes habits and different habits. And we get into our habits of going home and watching TV or Netflix or whatever, or, drinking alcohol. And it's fascinating how, so like 3 years ago, maybe 4 now, I gave up sugar and alcohol, and I committed to walking 10,000 steps a day and to focus more on sleep. That's all I did. And like, I literally lost 38 pounds, like by like blinking. And so now I let myself have alcohol. I have a birthday party this weekend, so I will be drinking then, but it's special occasions. And I find it just fascinating how like, that just like shifts your mental frame when you give up something or you change a habit. Like for me, I've always loved to work out, but I've had to have surgery where it's like I have to gain weight because I can't eat. It's mouth surgery. I can't eat for a while. So like I've been kind of going up and down in weight, and it's been driving me crazy. And I'm like, okay, I'm finally now recovered. I can work out again. It's small changes that make a big impact. So I'm like, okay, every night I'm just going to grab my weights and I'm going to do, then they're 25 pounds each. I love lifting. 10 bicep curls. And then there's a song about Sally. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's 3 minutes of squats is basically what it is to this song. And then doing my little 10-pound weights again. It's small changes like that make a huge impact, but it's something that is easy, but it's also easy not to do. Because like every day, that's like 5 more minutes that I take out of my life. But it's that stopping and it's that pausing and then making that a new habit. And generally they say after 30 days, you've made that a new habit. And you don't think of anything differently. So many times people are like, I want to be rich, or I want to lose, 20 pounds or 50 pounds or whatever. And they think it's like this big complicated thing. It's not. It's the simple things that make the most impact. It's just you need to do them consistently for a long period of time. And many of us are not very patient. So work on having some patience and some confidence in yourself and do those small things, and it'll make some huge impact.
And I feel like it's so empowering. And I want to connect this to the finger skating. I think in our earlier conversation you mentioned that you're going finger skating maybe at 4:30 to 5:30 in the morning. I want to understand, why did you have to go so early? Like,
Because the
what
hockey
was the
players.
skate? Okay, good. That's what I thought. Because I'm
Yep.
not a figure skater, I'm not a hockey player. I'm in New Jersey. We get snow, but not Minnesota snow.
Yep.
So help me understand, that analogy of maybe finger skating being less important than hockey, and maybe equate that to drinking being more important than saving, or whatever the normal equivalent you would come to say. Because even earlier in our conversation you mentioned, hey, I'd rather travel than buy coffee every day. So there is the idea that you can't do everything. There is the idea that you have to make sacrifices. Where are you going to trim fat? Help me understand how you came to this conclusion.
It's the way it works. Like, if you want something in life, you can't generally have like everything at once. And it also comes down to like the whole Vegas, the reason I hopped on a plane to fly to Vegas, because, I just wanted to go up to northern Minnesota. And my best friend from college is like, Nick, anything you do, you don't put 100% into it. You put 180. And that's just been me. And I don't know if it comes from figure skating or probably being an only child, also being a Capricorn born in December, very type A, very driven. But it also comes from like, there's certain things that I want in life and I want to go achieve them. And so you kind of put blinders on to the other things that are not necessarily so important. And that's where I think the majority of people, like let's say you and I are meeting and you're like, you know what, Nicole, you could do these 3 things that'll go change your life, or they could change your business or whatever. I will go do them. The majority of people, in my opinion, don't. Like, how many times have you been to a motivational speaker and like, oh my God, that's amazing, I should do this. And then you get in your car, reality of life comes back and sets into play. For me, I'm in that motivational speaker. And by that time, I've already been like, okay, I need to do this, or I've already put in into the motion of having those 3 things done. And so it's just it's that take action. It's that zest for life. I think a lot of that came from the travel. I have a picture of me with my finger with the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And then I went up to Sweden and milked cows. And so for me, like in college, I just got a glimpse of how much of the world is out there. And I'm like, this is so amazingly cool. And it also made me so much more grateful of where I was raised in America as a woman, particularly. But it gave me this glimpse of like, there's this huge world, and I want to see it and experience it all. And also too, like, I originally wanted to be like Madeleine Albright or Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Like, I wanted to make an impact and leave a legacy. Like, that's where I feel very blessed. Like, Prosper Well, my company will be around when I'm no longer here. I hope I can, get the Live It list, and I have a Live It list foundation. My goal is to have that exist when I'm no longer around. My goal is that, 1 in 3 Americans is happy. It shouldn't be that way. Like, we're in America. I mean, my goodness, when I was in Dubai, there was, I got started in this conversation, and this woman's like, well, do you know 20 minutes that way, women can't drive cars? And I was there on election day. This was 2 years ago. I was there on election day. And so it was like, wow, like, it just gives you a different perspective of life. And for me, we're in America. Like, how can you not be happy? Like, you can wake up and you can start a business if you want to. Like, the world's your oyster. It's just a matter of, how shiny you want your pearl to be.
Loved our conversation, Nicole, and I love the candidness with which you've kind of shared your wisdom with me and with the audience. I want to ask 2 questions, and they might be uncomfortable. Feel free to pivot and talk about something else. I'll leave it totally on you. The first question is going to be less uncomfortable. The second one might be more uncomfortable, but I think it'll add immense value for people. So I'm going to ask them anyway, and I hope that's okay. Number
Yeah.
1, my understanding is you're, a financial planner, wealth advisor. You help people manage their money. In theory, if you're building this Live It list, people are spending money. And in theory, they have less money for you to manage. And in theory, you make less money. So why would you go through that process of encouraging people to spend money? Help us understand, your mentality with respect to money, and with respect by being a fiduciary, by doing right by your clients.
Because one, people are happier, and I believe what goes around comes around, and I believe the more you give comes back to you tenfold. And it was interesting because this morning I was on TV and I was in the green room and I was chatting about that. I was like, yeah, I'm like, all of a sudden we have this huge push of new clients coming to us. A lot of them are women, that they're financial advisors, you know, this 60-year-old guy that they don't like calling because they call and he makes them feel stupid, let alone like doesn't want them to take their money out. And I'm like, yeah, I just ended up with a woman. She just bought a house in Arizona. I just ended up with a woman and she's taking her family to Hawaii. So I feel like for me, most days, even though I am a wealth advisor, I really feel like a therapist. But I also feel like, you know, it's not my job to keep someone's money. It's my job to help them be very thoughtful in their financial planning. And so it's not spend everything that you have nothing and that you are destitute. And it's also not save everything so that you have all this money to give on to the next generation or a charity or wherever. And so it's all about being focused on what's your priority and what's important to you. And so that's what I feel so blessed, because I was talking about how we got started on the topic, because I was like, yeah, I'm like, you know, I just took 9 people to Egypt. And, you know, they're like, oh, are they clients? I'm like, some are clients. I'm like, that's so cool, is to invest money for someone. And then to be like, yeah, okay, you want to go to Egypt or Iceland or wherever, let's go together, and helping someone make those experiences happen.
I love it. That's the answer I was hoping for. The next question, the next question I don't have a preconceived notion on. You mentioned you're a survivor of domestic violence. You mentioned coming to the realization that you're a victim. I want to touch on this. I don't know how to do it respectfully, so I'm just going to do it with the greatest intention, and I hope it'll land
Yes.
that way. Um, for me, I want to understand, if you don't mind sharing with myself, with the audience, kind of like what was going on. When did you realize it was a problem? I want to link this to a lot of things that people go through in life. People might have diabetes. They might have mental health challenges. They might be like, I'm dyslexic. They might be dyslexic. They might not know what challenge they're going through. They might not know there's a word about it. Then they'll learn and they'll be like, oh, hey, this is me. Now I need to
Right.
do something about it.
Right.
So I wanted to understand from your experience, if you don't mind kind of shining a light on that part of life, kind of when you realized something was wrong, the actions you took to manage the situation, and I guess your whole thought process throughout.
I knew before I got married, I knew walking down the aisle that I should not be doing this. But I was raised Catholic, strong values and morals, and I felt like I had to go through with it. And that's part of the reason why I stayed married for so long, because that's, you know, you're with one person and that's how it's supposed to be. And so, but once the kids were born, and in my opinion, domestic violence, the worst of it is the emotional piece. You know, the bruises and stuff like that. Like I stayed also so long too, because I also rationalized it. Like I'm a certified divorce financial analyst. And so I would volunteer a lot teaching a class called Divorce Dollars and Cents. And that would be at women's, you know, shelters, women's organizations. And so I was around a lot of women, and now it makes sense why I was so attuned to volunteering there, because I could so relate to these women. But a lot of these women, you know, like one woman, she was pushed through a shower door. Another woman, you know, was brought into a coma. Another woman was pushed out a window and run over by a car. And so I never had like broken bones or anything. I always rationalized it that way. But in my opinion, the emotional piece is the worst, because that still lives with me today. I mean, I do a special kind of therapy called ART therapy, alternative resolution therapy, for PTSD, and I'm seeing my therapist tomorrow. Like there's, you know, things that I will never leave me. But I also believe what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's made me a much better human. It's made me a better employer, definitely a much better mom, a friend, you know, you name it. And it's made me who I am. And so I believe all of us go through horrible things. It's just, and we all go through them. It's just a matter of when and where they are and how long they last. But I really also believe it's how we overcome them, or what happens afterwards, that defines who we are as an individual and what we can do with it. And that's where, like, I could become this emotional mess and, you know, depressed and wallow, or I could become on the other extreme, this angry, bitter woman. Or how I look at it, I can come in the middle and like manifest my perfect life, inspire other people, you know, be happy and, you know, own that resiliency. But For me, when I realized I needed to get out and do something was when the physical abuse, let alone the emotional, was affecting our children. So that's where, there were so many times I tried to call 911, that the phone would be grabbed and, hung up and I didn't get through. But on August 4th of 2010 was the one time, that I was able to get through. And looking back now, I made so many mistakes. That's part of the reason why I have the Live It List Foundation. And we actually have, we take nominations, and we have two women that are recipients. They are coming here to our office in just a few hours. Start the year, we give them Christmas gifts. So we have one woman who, when she was nominated, she was 96 pounds. She's now 83. She basically doesn't have money to go get groceries. So we're giving her today tons of gift cards where she's been sleeping on the floor or on a couch or a chair. We're giving her a mattress. We have a vacuum for her. We've got gifts for her grandkids so she can actually have a Christmas. And then we help these women throughout the whole year. I'm providing financial advice. They get a makeover, they get a coach. We have a chef that's going to teach her how to cook and shop and all that stuff. And the whole concept is to help. I have the chills. The whole concept is to help these women, empower them, and get them from survivor to thriver. And my goal then is that they spread the word and thrive with other people. And, it's like that snowball rolling down the hill. And so it's all these mistakes that I made that I'm trying to stop other people from making, and from an education standpoint, because that's the thing. Like, there's an organization called Maria's Voice. They're actually based out of Minnesota. There was a woman, but they're national. They're actually global. They, their daughter Maria was all of a sudden brutally murdered, and no one knew that she was in a domestic violent relationship. And so their organization, Maria's Voice, actually partners with employers, kind of like now you know what to look for when someone's having a heart attack, right? Or if someone's drowning. I feel like there is this lack of education or knowledge of what to look for when someone's in a domestic violent relationship. And 1 in 6 women are in a domestic violent relationship, 1 in 9 men. And so their organization is every time I go to the doctor and they ask you, do you feel safe in your environment? I always say, thank you. I'm like, thank you. Because you asked that question every single time I went into the doctor. And he started going to the doctor with me when I was pregnant. And I wish he wasn't there. I wish that, I'm like, looking back now, I wish he wasn't in the room, but he is. Maybe now medical doctors have changed their philosophy or their position, and them asking that question over and over and over again. If your friend always cancels on you, he had access to my calendar. So he would see when I was having lunch with my best friend. So he would, there was one time he pulled me into his car and he's like, we got to go somewhere else. So I kept canceling on my best friend. If you have a good friend or a neighbor and they're always canceling on you, or, you're not looking for that busted jaw or that black and blue eye. It's those other things that you don't see. And that's where, it's not that you can save someone, because all of us have our own timing of when to get out. And some women, stay a very long time for various different, I stayed too long. But the kids were the impetus for me to be like, okay, I've got to do something. It's not just about taking care of myself. It's about taking care of those around me.
Nicole, thank you so much for sharing this powerful story with a lot of lessons that people can learn. Because for me, sometimes it can feel like it's so hard to comprehend. At a very basic level, I firmly believe you don't know what you don't know, which is why I asked the question. And I felt like part of the answer that you mentioned was the power of therapy. Do you mind touching on that a little bit with respect to the idea that you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know the potential benefit or cost of therapy?
Yeah, that's where I joke I'm a therapist, but I feel like one. And I never saw a therapist. Once he was arrested, the first time I was like, oh my gosh, I need to go see someone. And it's fascinating because I went and saw this woman, and she's like, okay, I was there for a very short period of time. She's like, here's your homework. I want you to go read The Verbally Abusive Relationship and then come back. And I went back tomorrow because I'm a fast reader. So I went back the next day, and she's like, okay, I want you to write down 12 things you want in a partner. And so I wrote down my 12 things, and she goes, and I want you to highlight the ones that are non-negotiable. So for me, I'm allergic to smoke, so non-smoker. Then she goes, then I want you to check off the ones that your husband, because he was married at the time, and that was the most eye-opening thing to me for the relationship that I was in, how unhealthy it was, let alone it was not the right person for me. But it was also eye-opening from the standpoint of, oh my gosh, like I always like there back then there was this negative stereotype I feel like of therapists, or like if you're in therapy, I feel like
It still exists, Nicole. It still
really.
exists.
So
That's why
for
we're
me,
talking about it.
yeah. So for me, I feel like I looked at her, I was like, oh my God, like here's like a woman that can like coach me, like, and make me be a better person. And so
And enjoy
that
your
just,
life more.
yeah, so that like set me off on its own. And the kids were super little, right? And I was like, I need my kids in therapy. Now my daughter, she was 6 months old, right? So she couldn't even talk. Like, it was my son. And so when he was about 4, we got him into play therapy. And then one of the most amazing things, I met a woman, and for me, I was just like, that's why I have my foundation, is like to spread these resources. And we do a women's empowerment luncheon every year to be like, here's all the resources that it took me hours and thousands of hours and time and money, like figuring out. Not that I have all the answers, because everything works differently for everyone. But neurological reorganization was a game changer for my children. And I met this woman, and it comes from brain trauma. And my kids would do these positions every morning, exercises, and it helped them be better in sports and better in school. Because my daughter, she is dyslexic. She also does have ADHD. And so all of these tools, I really think, help set my kids up for greater success, as they age. And then I kept seeing a therapist, and, you name it. And I was seeing a therapist for the kids. And then eventually, I did like EMDR, and I did all of these things. And I was trying to lose all this weight, and I'm like, why am I so stressed out? Like, what is going on? Like, oh, it's just hormones, like, especially as a woman, like everyone's like, it's hormones, it's hormones. And then I met this therapist that's like, you should look at doing brain tapping. She's like, I don't really do it. So it took for a long time, one, to find a therapist that did brain tapping. Because I feel like there's waiting lists forever for some of these people. And so I went and saw her and met her, and she's like, actually, we're not going to do brain tapping. We're going to do art therapy. And I'm thinking painting. And I'm like, I'm not a good artist. She's like, no, alternative resolution therapy. And so it's basically where you take a story or, of something that happened in your life, and you go back to that moment and you reframe it. And so, just a simple story. I would come home, and, we're in Minnesota, there's snow. I'd come home, and if I parked the car in the garage, like the world blew up. So the next night I came home, I didn't park the car in the garage, I left it outside. The world still blew up. Like, no matter what I did, if I parked the car in the garage, it was wrong. If I parked the car out of the garage, it was wrong. The garage either got wet or no, couldn't figure it out. So once a year, after some time, once a year, I would pull into my garage and I would think about that moment. And now I'm like, oh my God, thank God I can park in my garage and decide if I want to park in here or not. No one has anything to say about it. But we took that as a story, as an example to reframe, like driving into a garage and all of that stuff, and to help me get from that positive standpoint. The other so art therapy, neurologic organization, and then somatic exercises. Somatic exercises, I do them every night, are just a game changer for me. So it's helped me release that trauma. I used to cry as a human. I used to have lists. I was a super bubbly person, loved hugs, and I lost myself. I didn't want anyone to hug me. I didn't want anyone to touch me. You take those tests, like the 5 love languages. Physical touch was bottom number 5. I was like, stay away. Now it's number 1. And so I found myself back. And so that's where, I feel like I can help other people. I want to help other people find themselves and know themselves.
I love that, Nicole. And I loved, art versus art therapy. And just the idea that sometimes people can say something and we can understand something completely different.
Yeah.
And I feel like that happens a lot more than we realize, especially with personal finance, especially with the things that we're talking about, which is why I wanted to dig a little bit deeper. Nicole, I have, 2 last questions for you. The first one is going to be easier. Sorry, the first one's going to be harder. The second one's going to be easier. Obviously, Nicole, you're very good at what you do. You're impacting a lot of lives, in a way that I don't even think you can understand, with love and respect, because I think, you're looking at systemic change. You're mentioning how your company is going to outlive you. You're mentioning how you're helping people, you're helping their lives, but then they're also being able to get gifts for their grandkids, which might even change their grandkids' lives. So to me, you're doing amazing work. Nicole, why would you spend your precious time coming on the podcast today?
Because if I can impact one person, that person hopefully will impact someone else. And but I do appreciate that question because I was actually on. So there's another CEO friend of mine, and we're like, we need to get together. We need to get together. Everyone, what? Like, let's get together for lunch. Let's get together for coffee. I'm like, well, first off, I don't drink coffee. Second, so she's on her treadmill in her office, and we do a 30-minute Zoom. And it's just to reconnect and quick. And so I actually was telling her that. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I'm really careful. Both of us, I'm like, I really appreciate this, are really careful with our time. And so that's where, like, I used to say yes to everything. I don't say yes to everything. Like, I used to speak all the time, Now I'm like, oh, you're in Indiana, New York, just said yes to go to New York. so I don't, I've learned that I can't say yes to everything. And so there's certain podcasts that, like, if someone reaches out, like, I listen to what they do. And that's where I feel like you make this impact. You ask phenomenal questions. And so that's where I said yes. And my hope is that at least one person will take something from this and make some small change in their life, impact their life, and then go to impact someone else's life.
I love that, Nicole. I feel like we could continue the conversation for hours, but
Mm-hmm.
I know you have other commitments. I want to be very wary and respectful of your time. I just have one last question for you, Nicole. If somebody is listening to this episode and they've fallen in love with Nicole, you, your personality, what you stand for, everything, and they weren't really sure about their money, what is the best way for them to reach out to you, your company?
Mm-hmm. You can go to prosperwell.com. You can always Google Nicole Middendorf. That's one thing my good girlfriend who lives out in Pittsburgh, she's like, anytime you're ever down and having a bad day, just Google yourself. She's like, stop complaining. So you can go to thelivitlist.com or to prosperwell.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all, you name it, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of that, but prosperwell.com.
Perfect. And we'll include that in the show notes. Once again, Nicole, I really enjoyed the conversation. I felt like it really reinforced that money isn't just about numbers on a screen, it's about the choices that we intentionally make over time, guided by discipline, clarity, and values. Nicole, thank you for reminding us that real wealth is built quietly, patiently, and intentionally, not through shortcuts or hype. Thank you for sharing your experiences, your perspective, and your wisdom. If this episode brought you clarity or calm, follow the MyFinJourney podcast. Share it with somebody who's trying to make smarter decisions for their future and their families. Thanks again for joining, guys. Bye.
Thank you.